This is Faux-Authentic History.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm Brian Young.
And I'm Holly Fry.
Holly, have you ever heard The Legend of Zelda?
I have. I will say it is an area of legend and history that I am not as well versed in as some others are, but I definitely know about it.
Researching this episode, the history was a lot more complex than I thought it was. So I'm really excited to bring it to everybody.
Yeah, I think often that's how most history is. You think it is one thing, and then as you delve into it, it reveals myriad other tiny aspects along the way, and it kind of builds out the picture.
So, the land of Hyrule has a long and complicated history, and that's sort of compounded by the fact that so many of the major players over the years share the same names, and the history itself can be cyclical. So we've chosen a sliver of the overall history that'll give you the best cross-section of what the world is like, though we're fully aware that there's so much we're leaving out. This is just one episode.
And it's also important to note before we get too far in that this is just one timeline and the one sort of that we currently reside in. So per our research, this timeline splinters at different branching points because at one point time travel comes into play in the effort to defeat evil. And there are distinct histories that were created as a consequence. So though there are different timelines and we're only tracking mostly just one, they actually all begin the same way.
So to start, we'll have to go back to the creation of the world and the three goddesses who were created, and the three goddesses who created it. These goddesses descended from the chaos and were named Din, Nehru, and Faeror. Din was the goddess of power, and she created the land. Next came Nehru, the goddess of wisdom, who created order. And finally, Faeror, the goddess of courage, created the diverse inhabitants of Hyrule.
And these goddesses, once the world was complete, left to go back to their own realm. They left the world in the care of the goddess Hylia, and with her they left an essence of their power, and that was the Triforce. And the Triforce consisted of 3 golden triangles of such power that it was said that anyone who possessed the Triforce could have their wishes granted.
Unfortunately, the Triforce granted wishes regardless of the contents of the heart of the wisher. It could be used for good as well as evil as long as the wisher possessed 3 things: a strong heart, innate ability, and a balance of the 3 virtues, which were power, wisdom, and courage. Because of this, demons arose to destroy Hylia and take the Triforce for themselves.
Demise, the Demon King, led this effort to take over the world, which caused Hylia to gather the Triforce and remaining humans after the Demon King's initial assault into a concentrated area of the land and cast it into the sky to keep them alive. Then she obscured this land with a barrier of heavy clouds, and the land below to obscure them further from the wishes of the demons.
Hylia and the remaining tribes on the surface fought Demise and his demons fiercely until they were finally able to seal Demise away. The seal that bound the demon was weak, though, and Hylia knew that something more must be done. She tried to wield the Triforce that was left to her by the 3 goddesses to banish Demise from the world once and for all, but found that as a goddess, she couldn't actually wield the power. To eventually destroy Demise, Hylia had to renounce her godhood and choose to be reborn as a human.
As the tribes of the world waited for the goddess to be reborn, Impa, a woman of the Sheikah tribe, was chosen to watch over the sealed prison of Demise to ensure that he was not able to escape.
Hylia was eventually reborn in the guise of Princess Zelda, as the seal of Demise weakened. And this was the first Princess Zelda in the historical record, but it would by no means be the last. This Zelda lived for many years in the skybound island, hoisted toward the heavens by the goddess Hylia, until Girahim, a servant of Demise, found her and was able to conjure a tornado that brought her crashing down to the surface world.
Zelda was quickly rescued by an old woman who told Zelda the truth of her divine heritage, and that in order to defeat Demise once and for all, she needed to cleanse herself in the temples of the sky and the earth. As she set out on this quest on her own, she was captured by the agents of Girahim, but quickly saved by Impa.
The world had other things in motion to protect the goddess as well. Following the destiny foretold of in the legends of Gaepora, Zelda's father and instructor of the Knight Academy, a young man named Link found his way to the statue of the goddess. So there he found the goddess sword and its spirit, Phi. Legend had said that when an evil drew to the land, the sword would glow and attract a hero, and Link was that hero.
Link found the sword and raced for Zelda, who was fleeing with Impa to pray at the two springs, Sky and Earth, so that she might regain the memories of her goddess form, and so that she could strengthen the seal that bound Demise. But Girahim found them.
So Link fended off the Agent of Demise, while Zelda and Impa entered the Gate of Time, where they went into the ancient past, and with Link's help, Zelda was sealed in a temple where she would slumber for thousands of years until Demise could be destroyed. During this time, Link quested for the Triforce, found it, and was found to be worthy. He used it to cause the destruction of Demise, the Demon King.
But unfortunately, Girahim was not killed and took to the Temple of Time to perform a ritual that would resurrect Demise in the past. Link arrived there to stop him, but was too late. Girahim succeeded in bringing back Demise, but Link was there this time and used the goddess sword that had been transformed into the Master Sword to kill Demise and seal his spirit of evil into the Master Sword.
When Link returned to the surface world, peace had come to the land, and Zelda awoke after her 1,000-year slumber. But this was only the beginning, as the destruction of Demise caused a curse in the world of cyclical reincarnation, bringing these forces, Demise, Link, Impa, and Hylia, back to do battle over and over and over again over the years.
So this cycle repeated many times throughout the years. Demise would come back with different names like Ganon or Ganondorf or Aghanim, and every time the goddess Hylia, as Zelda was put in peril, Link would come and save the world. Impa would make appearances here and there. The original Zelda's father, Gaepora, even found himself reincarnated as a wise old owl once or twice. At one point, Link suffered a great defeat at the hands of Ganon, and though evil took the land for a while, and the strength of the Hylian bloodlines faded, there were still reminders of it everywhere. In another cycle of the curse, Link crushed Ganon once more, and peace and prosperity reigned until the cycle began again.
And that's where we're going to pick up again in this history. After the most recent defeat of the Demon King, the kings and queens of Hylia passed down the Triforce one at a time to keep peace in the land. To prevent the Triforce from falling into the wrong hands, they required their heirs to be born with a heart free of wickedness, passing over heirs that did not exhibit these traits.
So this begins with a great king of Hyrule, whose name we actually weren't able to find definitively in our research, although we suspect that it may have been Gaepora. And he knew that the time of peace might be coming to a close, and his children weren't of age, and he knew that he was approaching death. So in order to prevent the abuse of the Triforce, he hid the pieces of the Triforce of courage and power, and the king cast a spell over the kingdom that ensured that a crest would appear on the hand of a worthy person of enough experience when they'd reached a certain age, and that would show them the Triforce so that they could rule justly.
And this king had a bad feeling about his eldest son, doubting his worth and character, so he went to his daughter, a princess by the name, of course, of Zelda, and gave her the secrets of the Triforce. Very soon after that, he passed away. His son took the throne, but the crest did not appear on his hand, giving him the ability to use the Triforce.
And this new king was also under the influence of a wizard, whose name is also lost to time, but it is suspected that he was probably a reincarnation of Ganon or Aghanim. And this wizard convinced the new king that Princess Zelda knew what was going on and what was preventing him from taking control of the kingdom the way that he thought he ought to. The king and his wizard interrogated Zelda, but she offered them nothing.
At this point, the wizard threatened Zelda with a spell that would put her into an eternal slumber, but she still refused to answer their questions. The wizard cast his spell, and Zelda fell, right then and there, into the sleep that he threatened.
The new king was horrified and remorseful of what had happened to his sister, and he erected an altar and allowed her to remain sleeping in a temple in the North Castle, and decreed that she would be known as Princess Zelda I, and that all firstborn princesses from then forward in the Hylian royal line would also be named Zelda. Using the Triforce of Wisdom, the king reformed his ways and governed the land peacefully. But Hyrule still declined, and no one knew of the hidden Triforce.
Generations passed, and the legend was largely forgotten, though Princess Zelda I remained in the North Castle, asleep and waiting for the spell to be broken.
It was many long years before the cycle renewed itself. Hyrule was no longer the world, but only its own small kingdom. And the princess, a Zelda from a long line of Zeldas, ruled the land with the Triforce of Wisdom, just as her forebears had done.
But she was not expecting the Demon King in the guise of Ganon to invade the land once more. Somehow, he knew the secret location of the Triforce of Power and stole it, descending the kingdom into turmoil. This Princess Zelda divided her Triforce of Wisdom into 8 pieces and scattered them across the land to prevent Ganon from gaining its power. Then she commanded her nursemaid, Impa, to seek out the one foretold to have the courage to defeat the Demon King.
Impa left, but Zelda's castle was besieged by Ganon, and she became his prisoner. But Impa was left alive, secretly fulfilling her quest. And eventually, Impa stumbled upon a young traveler, just 10 years old, named Link, a link to the long line of Links throughout history. And she was being harassed by Ganon's henchmen, and the young hero stepped in and interceded. And after rescuing Impa, she then told this young man of her quest to find him, and he, though he was very young, accepted the challenge.
After much hardship, suffering, and many near-fatal fights, Link was able to locate each of the 8 dungeons that Zelda had hidden the shards of the Triforce of Wisdom in. And one by one, he fought through their puzzles and destroyed their monsters, collecting the Triforce that would help him defeat Ganon. The labyrinths were each shaped like something relevant to the quest or myth, and they were fashioned after an eagle, the moon, the manji, the snake, the lizard, the dragon, and the demon.
With the Triforce of Wisdom, he was able to outwit the Demon King Ganon, who was wielding the Triforce of Power. The reigning Princess Zelda was freed, indebted at this point to Link for the work that he had done to save her.
Zelda resumed her reign, and peace came back to the land for a short time. 6 years passed in this peace before Ganon's underlings returned to Hyrule, determined to resurrect their fallen lord. It was said that by sacrificing the hero who defeated him and sprinkling his blood over the Demon King's ashes, that he would be able to rise again. This was their plan, but Link was not necessarily a fan of that.
And by this time, Link was 16, and he was living a peaceful life. Things got a little weird for him, though, when a mysterious crest appeared on the back of his left hand. This was the crest of the royal family, and concerned about this, Link went to Impa for guidance.
And she was flummoxed by this as well, as it had not happened ever. Impa knew where to take the boy, though. She took him to the North Castle, which had remained unopened by anyone except those of Impa's line for generations. She had him place his marked hand against the door, and that acted as a key, so the door opened, granting them entrance.
And the doors, when they opened, revealed Princess Zelda I, the one that had been cursed to eternal slumber by her brother's wizard all those years prior. And at this point, Impa knew that Link would be the one who was able to break the curse and awaken their sleeping beauty. In full view of the slumbering princess, Impa told Link the forgotten story of how she had come to be cursed, and then she entrusted Link with the means to awaken the princess.
At this point, Impa gave Link 6 crystals and a scroll bearing the crest of the Hyrule royal family. The scroll was left behind by Princess Zelda I's father, handed down one at a time by Impa's line. Though it was written in a script that was completely unreadable to Impa, Link was able to read it with no problem. This was some sort of mystical power presumably granted to him by the mark on his hand, because it was as though the scroll had spoken to him personally. And recorded on this scroll was the location of the Triforce of Courage. But first, Link had to take each of these 6 crystals he'd been given to their homes.
Impa implored Link to take up another quest, despite the fact that he had already risked his young life once already for a Princess Zelda. But he was determined to end the threat of Ganon's return once and for all, and the Triforce of Courage seemed like the best way to do that. So he, without hesitation, set out immediately.
Well, and it was a pretty big inducement that they wanted his blood to do it.
Right.
So he traveled the world across continents, all within the former borders of Hyrule, to the palaces where the crystals belonged. Each palace served as a barrier between the land of Hyrule and the Great Palace where the Triforce of Courage had been hidden, and every one of them was protected by a guardian deity, and they could only be defeated by one who was worthy.
Every palace had, buried deep beneath it, a stone statue, and it was in these statues that Link had to insert the proper crystal. For many months, he completed quests in this manner, fighting all kinds of monsters, ranging from Aches and Moblins to Moas and Octoroks, until each of the crystals he had been entrusted with had been returned.
Once the crystals had been put back in place, this dispelled the barrier over the Valley of Death, and opened the gate to the Great Palace. At the gate of the Great Palace, Link encountered the Great Thunderbird, which was the guardian deity tasked with protecting the Triforce of Courage. The Thunderbird resembled a stone lion with wings and was among the most fierce enemies Link had ever faced.
It threw fireballs, and it reflected magical attacks, making it incredibly difficult to destroy. But eventually Link was able to do just that. Once the Thunderbird had taken enough damage, it disintegrated into ash, leaving a key behind, and that key opened a door where Link would face his final test before being allowed to obtain the Triforce of Courage.
Link entered the next room and found something completely unexpected. His own dark shadow oozed and grew, creating a blackened copy of Link that he had to fight. Its weapons were his own, its weaknesses were his own. Sword to sword, shield to shield, Link had to confront his own weaknesses in order to pass the test.
And Link was, ultimately, victorious in this final test against his own darkened self, and he was able to take possession of the Triforce of Courage. Since he had previously been in possession of the Triforce of Wisdom and of Power, it wasn't difficult for him to reunite all three pieces of the Triforce and use their combined power to wake Princess Zelda I from her slumber.
Because he was able to combine all three pieces of the Triforce, he was also able to put down the revolt of Ganon's followers and prevent the resurrection of the Demon King. It was said that by bringing the Triforce back together and reawakening Princess Zelda I, the cycle on this timeline might have been broken permanently. For many, it was felt that this was the final piece that had been restored to Hyrule. And on this timeline, that was the end of the cycle. Other timelines have continued their cycle, but not this one.
It's fascinating to think about, in terms of the concepts of reincarnation, one society sort of living out these same challenges over and over and over again.
Yeah. And it's hard to think that, my parents named me Link, and so all of a sudden I'm a contender to be this hero that maybe I don't want to be. That's a lot of danger to put on a 10-year-old, and
right.
You never know when that would just manifest and appear.
Yeah. It speaks a lot to sort of the weight of names.
Yeah.
It gives one pause to think about your own name and what it might come with in terms of responsibilities and power.
I'm just glad I'm not named Link.
Me too.
I wonder if at some point, you don't meet a lot of Links, you don't meet a lot of Zeldas. It makes me wonder if after this point where people felt that that cyclical reincarnation situation had been solved completely, that they were like, okay, we're done. And Princess Zelda I was like, maybe I should also be Princess Zelda the last.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. I don't know.
But that would certainly make it... What's the line of succession to that, right?
Right.
Where it's like, who's the current Princess Zelda, who's the queen?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Tessier Ash Pools and how they just have to start naming their clone children by number. So that's how you get 3 Jane.
But I mean, like, who has a better claim to the throne of Hyrule at that point? Princess Zelda I, or the Princess Zelda that had broken up the pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom and sent Link to quest for those in the first place, who was the acting queen at that point?
Right. I suspect they would work it out, but I would think in most scenarios, I mean, I could be wrong. I would bet they would defer to Zelda the first, unless she didn't want to do it.
Yeah. And then she could be Princess Zelda Emeritus.
There you go. I think that sounds great.
All right. Well, I don't have any mail. All we've received are some great suggestions for shows to do in the future, and we appreciate those and want those to keep rolling in. But we don't have any to read on the air.
Well, that sounds just fine. We'll go without this time around.
Yeah, it's okay. If you would like to send us email, you could do that by going to fauthentichistory.com and using our comment form there. And we love to hear from you, whether that is just an idea for a future show, or if it's for something to add to any of these episodes or any of your personal experience with them. We'd love to hear that too. So where can people find you, Holly?
I'm on Twitter as Surliest Girl, and I'm on Instagram as SurlyGirly5. I also host a history podcast called Stuff You Missed in History Class, which you can find at missedinhistory.com, which will connect you to all of our social media, which is Missed in History, basically. And then I do another show with you.
Oh, you're right. That's you can find us on Full of Sith, actually, which is a Star Wars podcast, and we like yakking about Star Wars. So presumably you've listened to that. Like I feel like most people who've listened to this listen to that show. And that's probably how they found us. But I could be wrong. If you haven't, go check it out. You can find me on Twitter at Swankmotron, and that will get you to wherever you can find my writing, whether that's prose or journalism kind of stuff or nonfiction and all that sort of stuff. So unless you've got anything else, Holly.
I do not.
Oh, find Fauthentic History on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
Which would be Fauthentics on Twitter, and just type in Fauthentic History with an X on Facebook. You can find us there, and feel free to drop a review for the show on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else you listen to the show. That would help us greatly.
Indeed.
And I guess there's nothing else. So,
till next time.
Yep.
Thank you.